As Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Kim Jong-un walked together in Beijing, a hot mic picked up an unguarded conversation about organ transplants and the possibility of living up to 250 years. This was not a macabre small talk amongst aging dictators. It was a glimpse behind the curtain, a glimpse into a world where human beings can be treated as interchangeable parts to prolong the lives of autocrats. But forced organ harvesting is not healing. It is murder, masquerading as medicine. Today, this commission examines one of the most barbaric human rights atrocities of our time, the forced harvesting of organs from prisoners of conscience, death row inmates, and other vulnerable people, especially in communist China. Let me be clear, ethical organ transplantation is noble and life-saving. But what we are examining today is the polar opposite. It is the conversion of the imprisoned and persecuted into inventory. Hearts, livers, kidneys, lungs, corneas, taken from living, sold to the desperate, hidden behind hospital walls, protected by secrecy, corruption, fear, and state power. I shared my first of several hearings on forced organ harvesting 30 years ago on June 18th, 1996, 30 years ago. And as Jan knows, we had many, many hearings focusing especially what was being done horribly to the Falun Gong. And since then, the evidence has become even more disturbing, more detailed, and more compelling. The most persistent allegations in China centered first on the Falun Gong practitioners, peaceful men and women targeted by the Chinese Communist Party for eradication, genocide. Later came mounting evidence concerning Uyghurs, already victims of genocide in the Uyghur region, Tibetans, Christians, death row inmates, and others treated as property of the state. Experts like Ethan Gutman have documented how this atrocity expanded from death row prisoners to prisoners of conscience and religious detainees. The China Tribunal concluded that forced organ harvesting has been committed in China for years on a significant scale. Witnesses at previous hearings have warned us about military hospitals, impossibly short wait times in order to procure an organ, organs available on demand, and a transplant system that cannot withstand scrutiny. And yet, Beijing now asks the world to believe that the problem has somehow been solved. It says the transplant system now meets international standards, and once again, the disappointing and corrupt WHO takes Beijing's claims at face value, just as they did in the early days of COVID. But today, this commission has received rare and extraordinary eyewitness accounts from inside the Chinese gulag itself. Ali Montavalian written submission details his incarceration in a PLA-linked prison hospital near Shanghai, and Kalibor Sadiq's testimony from the detention camps in the Uyghur region. Together, their accounts shatter Beijing's fiction that its transplant system is voluntary, transparent, and compliant with international standards. Ali Montavalian spent years inside China's prison system. His submission describes coerced thumbprints on so-called consent forms, bondage tranquilizers, last rooms of terminal patients, prisoners taken to surgery and not returned, mobile freezer carts and bodies moved towards incineration. His account strikes at the heart of Beijing's favorite defense. The Chinese Communist Party told the world it had ended the use of executed prisoners' organs. And I would just again point out parenthetically, and Sam will remember this, Sam Brownback, Harry Wu brought over a guard who brought evidence that was absolutely compelling, and he testified in the late 90s. And he pointed out that the ambulances would be lined up one after the other. They would shoot the prisoner, not to kill, but to just put them into a coma, take their organs, and then that individual would die. And you know, that was almost 30 years ago. The 30-year-ago hearing didn't have that, but Harry Wu was just amazing in what he brought forward. And there were people in the administration then that didn't want to hear that. And we tried, but they didn't want to hear it. Inside the prison hospital system in 2020 and 2021, years after being told the world it had stopped taking organs from prisoners. Ali says he saw unconscious, shackled men, known as sleepers, brought by armed personnel directly into the surgery rooms. They never returned. My God, what a nightmare. This is not voluntary donation. This is execution by organ extraction. Mr. Sadiq brings us inside another part of the Chinese gulag, the camps of the Uyghur region. I will not summarize his testimony in detail because in just a few minutes she will speak for herself. But her account shows a system where human beings are reduced to commodities, where state controls the body as well as the mind, and where coercion and fear are used to destroy dignity. The prison hospitals in Gulag described in these testimonies are not a place of care, rehabilitation, or education. They are crime scenes, part of a system of coercion, medical abuse that knows no parallel in genocide in China. Organ crimes are not just a Chinese problem. It is a global one that flourishes wherever coercion, poverty, corruption, secrecy, and demand intersect. That's why Congress must act. The House has twice passed my legislation with overwhelming bipartisan support. Most recently, H.R. 1503, the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act, passed the House 400-1 a full year ago. And it's still languishing in the Senate, but it passed a full year ago. It would criminalize forced organ trafficking, impose serious sanctions, require reporting, deny visas, and create penalties of up to 20 years in prison and up to $1 million for knowingly being complicit in this crime. The bill is not a press release. It is enforceable policy. It says to brokers, traffickers, corrupt officials, complicit doctors, hospitals, researchers, insurers, and middlemen, if you profit from coerced transplants, directly or indirectly, you should risk your money, your visa, your access to the U.S., and your freedom. Because if we can get you, you're going to jail for these heinous practices. The Senate has not yet acted on the bill, and I appeal to them. I believe that they must delay is denial for that poor 25 to 30-year-old, as Ethan Gutman has told us over and over again, average age 28, who is killed, murdered, just for their organs. Every day without consequences is another day of perpetrators operating in the shadows. Witnesses are intimidated, evidence disappears, and families never learn what happened to their loved ones. Forced organ harvesting is barbaric. It is systematic, it is state-enabled, and it's a big business. And speaking frankly, no one wants Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin to live forever. I suspect on this point there would be broad bipartisan agreement. But behind that dark money is a deadly serious point. No dictator, no party boss, no wealthy patient, and no broker should be able to purchase longevity with the organs of the poor and the persecuted. That is all the more reason to pass the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act and make unmistakably clear that the United States will not stand by in the face of such cruelty. Not with our expertise, not with our money, not with $1 of American complicity.
In the Chinese transplant industry, humans are the only element that can't be fully controlled. That's why I swear by field research. And over time, I've learned that all testimony, even that which doesn't support my ongoing thesis at any given time, is valuable. Yet, I've also been observing the often skeptical Western world. That includes myself back in 2006. And all witnesses are taking a big risk. Camp refugees who observed the organ harvesting selection process or were nearly harvested themselves, as I guess we're going to be hearing from some of those today, they matter. But the testimony of a medical practitioner who was directly involved in the transplant process has a more complex level of risk, and they may matter more in some respects. Now, I'll briefly focus on these medical witnesses because there's a continuity there that's very interesting that's over time. I'm going to recap current harvesting rates one more time with feeling. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to touch on Uyghur deportation from Central Asia, and I'll close with a few personal thoughts on policy. Now, regarding the slaughter, we have two witnesses from that. 15 years ago in a Westminster hearing, Enver Tohti, a former Uyghur hospital surgeon, confessed that he used his own hands to extract the kidneys and liver of a wounded but salvageable human being on a Xinjiang execution ground. In 2013, Dr. Ke Wen-je of National Taiwan University agreed that I could publish the story of his quest for organs on behalf of his Taiwanese patients. This happened in a mainland hospital, probably Wuxi People's Hospital. When Ke expressed doubts about the quality of executed prisoner organs, his mainland counterparts assured him that all the organs will come from Falun Gong. The Xinjiang procedure, I just have to promote these things, I'm sorry, adds to this collection. In 2007, an accidental witness, Kat, that's Mr. Sugawara, was assisting his Yakuza chieftain prepare for a liver transplant in a Beijing police hospital. Wandering into the wrong room, Kat found a bound and sedated young man, wrist and ankle tendons severed. A Chinese surgeon soothingly explained to Kat that the young liver donor was Falun Gong. In 2017, Saragul Satbe, a teacher in a Kazakh and Uyghur camp, gained exclusive access to organize the camp's medical files. A red check mark next to blood results signaled the individual had been pre-selected for harvesting. Several camp refugees that I interviewed recalled guards imposing color coding from pink vests to wristbands a few nights before the actual disappearances. In 2018, Samal, a Kazakh ethnic woman, that is a pseudonym, Samal, she was recruited by a Uyghur veterinarian to extract human intestines in preparation for the systematic extraction of organs. Why intestines? Because their workspace was in a secret medical compound 4 floors under a Uyghur and Kazakh concentration camp with substandard ventilation. And an update. Well, Dr. Ke of Taipei knew that the Falun Gong were being harvested. According to his Chinese colleagues, Ke became the teacher of ECMO to mainland China. That was, let me translate that. That is directly instructing Chinese surgeons to exploit an off-label procedure for live organ harvesting. As mayor of Taipei and as a presidential candidate for the Taiwan presidency, Ke could have been the ultimate medical witness. Instead, Ke was recently sentenced to 17 years in Taiwanese prison on corruption charges, and I'd love to see a plea deal there. Along with a hunger for medical witnesses, there is a hunger for scale. And the full publication of witness evidence in Chapter 5 concludes 2.5 to 5% forced disappearance rate in the camps, average age 28 to 29, specifications taken at night, final blood DNA test to establish health and identity. Assuming 1 million in the Xinjiang camps, forced labor factories, and other carceral environments, that's 25,000 to 50,000 Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other Turkic groups harvested per year. 2 to 3 organs extracted per individual to reach the minimum requirements for China's transplant industry volume. 60,000 successful transplants per year. That means a minimum cumulative death total in Xinjiang of over 200,000 now and counting. Now, some analysts recently speculated that the camps are closing, and it may be inside baseball, but I would welcome a question on that. Either way, forced labor organs are the same as concentration camp organs, and per capita medical attention that Xinjiang receives is extraordinary. Beijing recently pledged 6 more human organ transplantation medical institutions in the region by 2030. Now, the roundup of Uyghurs from China's neighbors is also extraordinary. My interviews established that 88% of Tajikistan's Uyghurs and 87% of Kyrgyzstan's Uyghurs have been deported back to Xinjiang. I also documented a new Chinese military base just north of Tajikistan's Kolma Pass, about 30 miles from a Tajik mine speculated to contain 50% of the world's uranium. The energy and mineral reserves of the Pamir and Kyrgyz mountain ranges are the South China Sea of China's western frontier. With Russia at war, without a U.S. presence, a new 9-dash line is theoretically possible. Regarding policy, we'll close with this. I like all the bills, but I support passing the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act first because it follows the surgical lead. The International Society for Heart and Lung Transplantation put the Chinese transplant industry and implicitly the Transplantation Society on notice with an academic boycott of China in 2022. Withdrawal of legitimacy by the political side should now be immediate and comprehensive. Nothing changes without embarrassment and trauma. One day after my press conference on Dr. Ke, Taiwanese medical authorities withdrew immunosuppressive drug coverage for Taiwanese patients who received Chinese organs. We could do that here. And instead of attempting to police the entire import-export medical industry, we could immediately investigate Thermo Fisher for providing the DNA test used on an estimated 10 million Uyghurs and Kazakhs. A word on limitations. The party responds to embarrassment by hiding, adapting, altering the production process, and adding new layers of complexity. We've seen this in forced labor. Beijing loves games, so we might need to consider changing the stakes of the game. I don't have a 20-point plan here, just a parting thought. Falun Gong is a Han Chinese majority Chinese spiritual movement. And they have no choice. Their sacred mission is to change China, and they deserve our support. Yet small nations rise. Often it's a delayed response when mass murder and wanton neglect have placed their future survival as a people in question. The potato famine, Ireland, Ukraine, Stalin's mass starvation, Israel, the gas chambers, East Turkestan, organ harvesting. Re-entering history is a bloody affair, yet these nations came back from the dead. Even if it begins as a cynical negotiation tactic, a tacit threat, a Uyghur state, even a democratic Uyghur state, is possible, and the liberation of Central Asia is also possible. For the party, that's the nightmare scenario. And the most improbable scenario of all is the systematic reform of the Chinese transplant system. But if our first objective is to staunch the bleeding, apply immediate and consistent pressure, pass this bill. Thank you.
Where the summit is taking place in China. I think this is just such an incredibly timely thing. And while these are hearings and things that you're familiar with and have been familiar with for years, the public is not familiar with these topics, unfortunately. In my experience in social movements, you've got to really rub the public's face in this stuff for them to get it. And once they do, then they'll kind of, okay, what should we do? And thank you for rubbing people's face in this stuff that you've known about and heard about for 20, 30 years, as have I. Even just yesterday, I was with Marigold Tursun. She's featured in our book, China's War on Faith, and she's a Uyghur. She was told finally before, this is toward the very end of her incarceration, okay, you can pick the way you die. We'll either shoot you 3 times, 3 bullets, or you can sign your life and your organs away to us. Now, if you pick the 3 bullets, we're going to charge you for each of these bullets a very large sum of money, and you can do it for free this other way. And you go, how cynical can a group of people be? This is her speaking yesterday about the technique that was used. Our children who were born in Egypt ultimately actually were the tool that got her out. Disfavored religious communities are particularly targeted by the perpetrators of forced organ harvesting schemes. Falun Gong practitioners, which we've heard about, systematically cataloged based on biometric markers and then murdered for their organs. Uyghur Muslims, and you've heard this before, their organs harvested and marketed to wealthy Middle Easterners as halal, and in an unimaginably cynical way doing this. And I don't like even repeating these because these charges are so horrific that they are virtually people they have a hard time in their mind even getting their mind around it. But this is happening and has been happening and continues to happen, and it's an evil regime that perpetrates it. We have here today, and Mr. Chairman, if I could take just a moment to introduce, you've got here the gentleman Peter Hsu. You may remember his name. You advocated for him, as I did a number of years ago, spent 5 different times in Chinese prison. He's been out here helping promote the book. He was considered the Billy Graham of China. They nearly killed him when they took him down he put him in a cross formation until he nearly died. They took him down. They said to him, okay, sign the confession that God's a hoax, Jesus doesn't exist. And he looks at the warden and he says, thank you for allowing me to participate in the sufferings of Christ. Just an amazing testimony of an individual who is here, and I've got to recognize Peter Hsu. And then the other person that's Bob Fu is hosting these gentlemen. You know Bob, but Pastor Pan of the Mayflower Church that got all 64 members of theirs out in a daring episode that I believe should be a Hollywood movie is here with us as well. Pastor Pan, wonderful men. They bear witness, and as they bear witness, they get family members persecuted back home. These are not free shots that people get to take. They get hit. Pastor Pan has relatives still in China being threatened. And I would ask our State Department to allow them to come if they're allowed out of China. Allow them to come here to the United States. Here's a brave man being willing to speak out, and the family members back home are still persecuted. And I hear this constantly from members of this persecuted community, of the various religious persecuted communities. You have experts that know more of the specifics of it. I want to talk mostly about policy. Number one, the United States should lead a global coalition of governments, academics, medical, financial institutions, and religious groups to openly condemn forced organ harvesting and take concrete steps to end the international complicity in this practice. We need a big coalition to come together and to say, this is horrific, it deserves to be no place in a modern world, and we should condemn it. The White House or Congress should host a global summit of religious, democratic, and political leaders calling for religious freedom for everyone everywhere, including in China. This is a hallmark issue for us, and on our 250th birthday, this founding of the country is based, the early settlers, primarily on seeking religious freedom. And it's still a hallmark human right of the soul, the right that's closest to who we are as a being, and these are the people the most persecuted. It would help, and it would help them substantially. We ask President Trump to raise with Xi Jinping the release of Pastor Ezra Jin, and he's said that he's going to seek that release. Jimmy Lai, and I would add, the 9 Catholic bishops currently in detention in China that we don't know their whereabouts. 9 Catholic bishops, and we don't know where they are. They're incarcerated. And I would ask as well that Pope Leo would criticize China publicly for the ongoing genocides in that country of the Muslim Uyghurs, of Falun Gong, of the Tibetan Buddhists, and seek the release of these 9 Catholic bishops that are detained in China. And, Mr. Chairman, I've got another set of additional recommendations that I want to submit for the record, but one of them, we host the G20 summit this year. We should have in that a major section on religious freedom. As we bring these world leaders of the top countries here, we should be talking about religious freedom and condemning publicly forced organ harvesting at that event. This would be something that Dr. Gutman points out, the embarrassment factor. It's a true issue, and you and I both know it. You've got to raise the profile of these issues to the point that governments are embarrassed before something happens. We should do that at the G20 summit as well. And then finally, our media, Hollywood, academia, big business must start shining a light on these horrific practices being conducted by the Chinese government and no longer look the other way. We cannot look the other way. Now, we've got such an integrated economy with China, and I hope and pray we're in the process of breaking that apart and breaking our supply chains and moving it to other places. And I'm seeing positive trends on foreign direct investment in China going down substantially, a lot of that coming to the United States and other places going up, which is favorable towards us. That's the right trend. It's going to take several years to disentangle these two economies, but we really have got to be clear-minded that we have to move this way. This is a communist regime in China that seeks our removal from the leadership on the world stage. And whichever one of these systems, and I contend that, and I'm going to end with this point, that we're in a clash of civilizations now. And one point of that is the communist group and authoritarians that look at the world and individuals as tools to be controlled or economic entities alone. And they are pushing aggressively and attacking us today. And on the other side is Western civilization. It's the United States leading a Western civilization that's built on a Judeo-Christian ethic, that everybody is created in the image of God. They are entitled to incredible dignity. They have inherent worth of who they are, and they have rights by virtue of who they are as an individual. They have rights. These two systems are in conflict and clashing. And I think we've just got to start being much more clear-eyed about what the stakes are, because whichever of these systems wins will direct how societies move over the rest of this century. And we're in this fight, and we're in it now. And we've got to sound the alarm to the public and move forward aggressively to win this fight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My name is Khalbunur Siddiq. I am from Urumqi. Our homeland is Turkestan. I'm a witness to the detention camps, and I am ethnically Uzbek. For 20 years, I worked as a Chinese language teacher and I held important administrative positions at Urumqi No. 24 Elementary School. Never did I imagine that one day I would be forced to teach inside a detention camp, or that I would become a witness to the crimes committed by the Chinese Communist Party against Uyghurs and other minority peoples. Today I stand before you to speak about atrocities, including the possibility of organ harvesting. I'll tell you only the truth, only what I personally witnessed and experienced. In March 2017, I was sent under a 6-month contract to teach in a man's camp located on a mountain in Saifango Village, number 5 Saifango Village, Urumqi City. The authorities told us we would be teaching students in a literacy training course, but they were not students. They were prisoners. There were fathers, young men, businessmen, religious figures, intellectuals, people from all walks of life. There are ordinary citizens. There were also elderly men among them. They had been taken from their homes, imprisoned behind barbed wire, triple iron gates, surveillance cameras, armed guards, and locked cells. Every Monday, no classes were held for the detainees. Instead, blood was drawn from them. They were given unidentified injections. Afterwards, they were given small white pills. Chinese nurses told me these are vitamins or calcium supplements. Since the detainees never see sunlight, the government ordered us to take care of them this way. But I did not believe them. How could the government that imprisoned, starved, tortured, and humiliated these people suddenly care about their vitamins? No, that was impossible. At that time and even now, I believe there was another purpose behind it. I also witnessed healthy men disappearing. I clearly remember one man named Osman. He was active in class and eager to learn. He was a wealthy businessman and appeared very strong and healthy at first. Among hundreds of people, I could easily recognize his face. Then one day, he disappeared. When I asked what happened to him, I was told he suffered from high blood pressure and diabetes and had died on the way to the hospital. There was another man who sat at the far end of the first row in the classroom. He too was hardworking, and I still remember his face vividly. Later, he also disappeared. I was told he died from kidney poisoning. I did not believe in these explanations. Every day in the classroom, detainees were constantly replaced. Older and stronger prisoners were taken away, while new ones arrived. A familiar face disappeared, and we were expected to accept whatever explanation the guards gave us. Later, when I testified before parliaments in various countries, I was asked about the disappearance of detainees and organ harvesting. I told them what I had heard while working in the camps. The special police driver who transported me and the police officer assigned to accompany me often talked among themselves. They said, right now in our country, the halal organ trade is booming. The detoxification center in Michuan County, Urumqi, has now become an organ transplant center. I did not witness the surgeries. I did not personally see organs being removed, but I heard these conversations. Later, after hearing my testimony, a close relative and friend of mine living in Europe, married to a foreigner, spoke to me on the condition of anonymity. She personally told me that Michuan's detoxification center had indeed been transformed into an organ extraction hospital. In 2018, she and her foreign husband were sent there for medical examinations before leaving for Europe. During that process, she saw many young detainees wearing prison uniforms, lined up under heavy Chinese police supervision, entering designated rooms. She also observed that the number of doctors had increased greatly, and that doctors were carrying unusual containers in their hands as they exited the rooms. She told me this and begged me to speak about it in my testimony. So for the second time, I heard directly from someone I personally knew, someone who claimed to have seen with her own eyes that this place had become an organ harvesting hospital. In the camps, I witnessed blood collections from detainees, injections, forced medications, disappearances, and the secrecy surrounding everything. Therefore, if you ask me today whether I believe the Chinese Communist Party turned Uyghurs in the camps into a source of profit through a so-called halal organ trade, my answer is yes, yes, 100 times yes. While I was in these camps, I witnessed horrors beyond words. Chinese police humiliate detainees to a level no human being should endure. They stripped them of their humanity. They did not call them by their names, but by numbers. They tried to break their minds, destroy their faith, and erase their destiny. Let me tell you more about what I witnessed, so the world will never forget about the genocide that's taking place in East Turkestan. When I first entered the men's camp, I walked into a building surrounded by barbed wire, electric doors, armed police, soldiers, locked gates. The detainees were brought out from their cells. Chains and shackles were on their hands and feet. Many still had unshaven beards because they had only recently arrived. Their eyes looked at me with desperation, as if I had come to save them. But I could not save them. I could not even help them. Guards surrounded me everywhere. The cells were dark. The windows were still shut. The detainees slept on bare concrete floors with only a thin blanket. For all 3 meals, they received only a small Chinese bun and watery rice soup. They were allowed to use the toilet only for a very short period of time. During the entire 6 months I was there, they were never once allowed to bathe. Their bodies weakened, their face changed. Healthy people become thin, pale, and exhausted. I taught 4 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, sometimes even for additional hours during inspection periods. But gradually I realized the purpose there was not education. The purpose was control. Later, detainees were forced to memorize red songs, patriotic songs praising the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping, and political slogans. The detainees were forced to praise the same Communist Party that had imprisoned them. They were forced to express gratitude toward the very system destroying them. During lessons, police would call detainees out, not by name, by their number, then take them for interrogation. The interrogation room was next to the classroom. Shortly after they were taken away, heartbreaking screams could be heard. They were tortured with devices such as electric batons, electric tiger chairs, electric gloves, and electric helmets. After my 6-month assignment in the men's camp ended, I was sent to a women's camp located at Tugong, Saibak District, Urumqi. There I saw many women and girls. Most were highly educated. Their hair had been cut short. They wore gray prison uniforms with blue numbered vests over them. Their faces were pale and lifeless. About 90% of these detainees were between 18 and 40 years old. The remaining 10% were older women, some even in their 70s and 80s. These women and girls were also given medication and unidentified injections. As a result, many of them completely stopped menstruating. Some had studied abroad. During lessons, they were forced to first to thank the Chinese Communist Party and the government before telling their stories. One woman said she had recently given birth and still had a nursing baby, but her breast milk had stopped. Another young woman said she had been preparing for marriage when she was suddenly taken to the camp. Excuse me. And she no longer even knew where her fiancé was. Yet she was forced to thank the government for providing such a great opportunity to learn the national language. Others say they had been taken directly to the camp immediately after returning from studies abroad. From the way these women painfully sat and stood, I could sense the severe abuse they had suffered. Tears constantly streamed from their eyes. In this camp, I heard about rape and sexual violence committed by Chinese police. I heard that guards use electric batons and other weapons to abuse these detainees. I personally witnessed the body of a young girl around 18 to 20 years old, being carried away before my eyes. I later heard that she had bled to death. Outside camps, the control continued. The Chinese government placed so-called Chinese parent relatives, Han Chinese men inside the homes of Uyghur women, especially in homes where husbands had been taken to the camps. Even in their own homes, these women faced various forms of abuse and humiliation. People were afraid to speak. Phones were monitored. Relatives abroad became a source of danger. My daughter at the time was in the Netherlands, and we lived constantly in fear and anxiety. Under pressure from neighborhood committees, assigned police officers, we were also forced to undergo sterilization procedures at Changleyuan Hospital in Tianshan District. Even though I did not want this, I had no choice. My safety and the safety of my family depended on obeying government demands. That's why I say we no longer had ownership over our bodies. I am one of the fortunate few who managed to escape after enduring tremendous suffering. The people inside the camps cannot speak to you. They have no way to make their voices heard. I am standing here today and at enormous personal cost to tell you this truth. Because the man who disappeared, the women who were abused, and the mothers separated from their children, and the families destroyed by this genocide need witnesses. Honorable Chair, distinguished members of the committee, I ask you not to turn your eyes away from this tragedy. The horrific violence taking place in East Turkestan is not merely a crime. It's part of the system that sees Uyghurs, the original inhabitants of this land, as less than human. This is genocide. The world once said never again, yet East Turkestan, it is happening again. I ask the U.S. Congress never to forget the Uyghur genocide. I urge you to continue your investigations and hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so very much,